Welcome, 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 welcome one, welcome all. I just want to give a few moments here for a few people to trickle in. We are now live for the now fourth session of the live stream of the course SQL Essential Training. As we do in the past, I've had my little reggae music playing, but I don't have it set up quite yet. But feel free to share some of your reggae pieces or just your musical pieces. In the meantime, as we do, break the ice a little, we give a few moments for some folks to come in. So why don't you break the ice a bit? I usually stream from Miami. Actually, I'm abroad at the moment. I'm all the way in Antwerp. Why don't you tell me a little bit of where you're tuning in from? That's a good icebreaker that we always start with. This session is going to be pretty important. It's going to get into chapter 5. So I'll give a few more moments for folks to trickle on in. But some ground rules, as we kind of mentioned before. We make this as interactive as possible, right? I mean, I talk a lot here, and I will be saying a lot of stuff with regard to chapter 5's material. However, I highly recommend, and this is the whole purpose of this, that you ask questions, leave some comments, and just let me know what's your sticking point or trouble point as we step through the material, and I'll be more than happy to swing around and answer questions as they pop up. Okay, so I am going to give just a couple more moments, let folks tune on in. I flip back and forth here. Let me just check my comments out here, and forgive me for sometimes I am having some help here with a couple hands, but now I'm the jack of all trades. So I am checking for comments as I am going through the material, and I hope they start coming through. Okay. All right. Let me just check my comments before we start jumping into things here. Give me one moment. Okay. So far, so good. All right. Now, I'm just going to say, can everyone see me and hear me? Just drop a yes or no or maybe in the chat or in the comments there so I can see. Sometimes I talk myself and talk my head off here, and no one is actually hearing. So please let me know if you're hearing by just dropping a thumbs up or yes, I can hear you in the chat. Okay. All right, awesome. Give me one sec here, and we are going to kick things off. Ian, good to see you, sir. Thanks for that confirmation. It's a big help. Awesome. All right, so that's good. Let's jump into things. It's just about a few minutes after. Jolie, thank you for the confirmation. So great to know that I'm being not just talking to myself here. So awesome. So this particular session is for chapter 5, and I'm going to share my screen here. It's going to look a little crazy for a sec, but just to get apples to apples. So we came from chapter 4, if you recall, if you were joined us on the last session, and that talked about query composition, composing queries, and it was sort of our first step into composing queries and getting familiar with the different types of syntax, the select clause, the from clause, and so forth, order by and limiting. Now we are going to take that first step and apply it going forward. This is really what we're stepping into, just kind of knowing SQL to start performing data analysis. And that's why this is called Discovering Insights with Data. So to kick things off, I have the first relevant screen here. It's called Operator Types. And if you recall, I'm just going to jump over here again. This is where we left off from last session a couple of weeks ago. And we compose our full SQL statement here, limiting the results and we did a great job. However, now we're going to step into another component or another clause, which is going to give us a huge amount of flexibility when it comes to querying and retrieving data uh, with pinpointed precision. Okay. All right. So to kick things off again, let's talk about operators. We are speaking about operators because they are instrumental to fine-tuning records. Prior to this point, again, if I reference this query, if we were to run this query here, if you recall, here are the top 10. If I were to try to get some insight from this, I have not that much control, meaning, let's say I wanted to get a specific record from these 10 records, I would have to manually go through each line to kind of pick it out, depending on what it might be. We have much more sophisticated ways of querying for data, and to do that, we're going to introduce a new clause, and that is the where clause. And if you observe again this query, we don't have a where clause. We have a select, we have a from, we have an order by, and we have a limit. So before we can introduce the where clause, let's get familiar with some types of operators. And in front of us here, there are three main type of operators. There are more, but here are the main most commonly used. They're arithmetic, comparison, and logical. And with arithmetic, most of these would probably stand out: add, subtract, multiply, divide. Modulo is just getting the remainder of a value that is divided. Then there's comparison operators: equal to, not equal to, greater than, less than, greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. And then logical operators: and, or, in, like, and between. We are going to touch on quite a few of these in this session. By the way, it's meant to be not a crazy amount of time. We're going to spend about 30 to 45 minutes just walking through some various queries here. Okay, so in the filtering of data, there are different types of data, if you recall. There is numeric data, there's text data, there's date data. And we are going to first start with numeric data. So let's jump over to DB Browser, which I hope you've already set up. We went through this in previous sessions, set this up. And let's go to our first session here. I pre-set up a few tabs here, and we're going to go through each one and just kind of look at how we would tackle a request. By the way, just to let you know, when it comes to SQL, forget about trying to get into the syntax. First, really understand that plain language, plain way of someone requesting information. So for instance, here in our description that we have laid out, how many invoices were generated for 2 songs purchased at 99 cents each in a single transaction? Now, if you've done the course, I twisted this question just a little because it maybe not have been that super clear in the course. So I just want to clarify any confusion by us stepping through this here. So let's see how we would tackle this. Our first step: how many invoices were generated for 2 songs purchased at 99 cents each? Well, before we dive in and start writing queries, let's first go to our browse data. And let's take a look at the track table. Why? Because the track table has the unit price of each song, as you see here in this last column. And if we look at these unit prices, each track has a unit price of 99 cents. So this is our first step to say, well, what is the lowest unit of track that we can find here? What is the again. Can you see me? Can you hear me? All right, folks, I hear you, Lisa. So can you see me? Can you hear me? That's the biggest thing now. So we did have a little drop off. I think we had a little drop off from StreamYard, but I am just double checking now. How's it going? Can you see me? Can you hear me now? Oh, great, great, great. Okay. So we're going to power through. We might be having some technical difficulties, but we'll get through it. Okay. Awesome, awesome, awesome. All right. So I'm actually going to circle back. Can't hear. Can everyone hear me as well? Because Lisa seems you can't hear me. Okay. How's the audio going? Can you all hear me now? Okay. All right. All right. Let's try to get this all sorted out. Give me one more second. Let's try to get our audio going here. Okay. I'm glad you could read the. Okay, awesome, awesome. You can hear now. Awesome. Great, great. We're not going to stop. We're going to keep pushing through. So let me share my screen here again and pick up where I left off. Okay, can you see my screen here? Awesome. I'm going to pause and check back more often because it seems like the connection here is my connection is great, but I think StreamYard is having a little bit of issues. So let's keep going. Where I was at here, probably missed out the construction of this SQL statement, but what we were after is the result to this question here. And the big difference between our last session and this one is we are introducing our where clause. What we were after in this particular quest here is how many invoices were generated for 2 songs purchased at 99 cents each in a single transaction. And what we did, we constructed this SQL statement first with the from clause going to that invoice table. Why did we go to the invoice table? When we went to that database structure tab and we checked the invoice table, we have a total column, and 99 cents times 2 is equal to $1.98. So we are looking for transactions that total to $1.98 on a single transaction date. And that is what this query is giving to us. So when we went to that from clause, we then went to the select and we included all of the columns we want to see in our result. The big twist in this is the inclusion of this where clause. So we're saying where the total column in that invoice table is equal to that $1.98. Finally, we just ordered our result in ascending order by the invoice date. When I ran this query, we got this result here. And we see that we have, let me just expose this messages window. We have 111 rows that will return. So we can go back to the management who requested this and say, well, there are 111 invoices that were generated for 2 songs purchased at 99 cents each. Now, this couldn't be more classic data analysis, as simple as you see it, but pretty powerful with the inclusion of the where clause. So let me jump back over again, make sure that everybody is hearing and seeing and looking good. Okay, awesome, 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 awesome. And by the way, stick with it. Again, 30 to 45 minutes. If we break down, we're going to get back up. That's how we do it, whether it's tech or whether it's our own selves. So let's keep going. The next step in our journey here. So our first request, and this was from WSDA management, how many invoices were generated? And we gave them that result, 111. Here you go. The next step is, well, how many invoices exist between a certain range, right? So with this new query here, we're still in the vein of numeric data. So we're now interested in another component. So what have I done here? And you'll see this going forward, and this is just for us to save a little bit time. I pre-started everything, right? So all I'm saying is go to that invoice table with this from invoice. And here are the same fields that we selected before. The twist here is in the where. So the where is dictated by the question. And that's why I say don't get lost in the syntax of SQL. Focus on the plain Jane question that's coming at you as a data analyst. How many invoices exist between $1.98 and $5? So we want to say where the total. And now we're going to introduce the between keyword. We're total between, and that's now the range of values. And we have that $1.98, and an other keyword is AND, $5. And if you recall, we were looking at some of the operators, and this is why I started with those operators at first. The operators go hand in hand with the where clause. So we're employing a between and an and operator. And with this particular full statement, we're saying, give me everything that's between this particular range. So now let me run this statement here. And here we have 178 rows returned to us. And we can now effectively tell the management or this request that came to us and say, hey, there are 178 invoices that fall between the range of $1.98 and $5. Okay. As I pause through each one of these, I'm going to circle back, and please, I encourage, as you know, no such thing as an ill question. So just keep those questions coming. That's the whole point. I'm super glad to stop, turn, and ask and answer any question. Okay. So let's keep going. I'm going to check in as I do here. Forgive the crazy look of the screen, but we're going to keep pushing here. So here we have looked at two instances of our queries, right? In terms of numeric data. We first look at the invoice date where the total is $1.98, and then we employed the between and said between this particular range, sorry, and now we have our query returning the result that we wanted. Okay, let's keep pushing. Now, our next query is, what about if you wanted a specific set of values? You're interested in knowing specific values, unlike a range of values. So in this case, our management has asked us, how many invoices do we have that are exactly $1.98 or $3.96? How do we respond to this? So we've already prepped our query here. We're saying, all right, all of this information, and by the way, how do we even know this? That first step, that in case I went too fast there, go into that browse data, go into that database structure tab. That's really your first step. After you really comprehend that request, you're going into your database to start getting familiar with the tables that you need to target in your SQL statement. And you can do that in the browse and the database structure tabs. Once you've done that, now we're going to say, okay, let's get specific to what's being requested. Now we're going to say where the total, and we're going to introduce another keyword, in. So the in operator, and we're going to say in the particular values that we're looking for. So in open parenthesis, $1.98, and that's the first value that we're interested in finding. And the second value, separated by a comma, by the way, in case I went too fast there, included a comma, space, then I say the second value I'm interested in, $3.96. Close my parenthesis. And by the way, I could introduce another order by. So I can say order by invoice date. Do invoice date. Okay, now let's run this query and see our result. We now have a fully executed query. And if you take a look here, we have our values in the total column satisfying the values we've specified, and that is $1.98 or $3.96. And we could order our results differently as well. Let's order by that total. Might be a little better to order that way. Yep. Jolie, can you hear me? Yep, I am battling it. I'm not going to give up. Can you see me? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. How's it look for everyone? Can you hear me again? Okay. Okay. Yes. So I have confirmed StreamYard is definitely acting up a bit. So just bear with me. Awesome. Thanks. Thank you for the confirmation. You guys are the definition of team spirit. So despite the technical difficulties, we're going to keep going. All right. I've made a couple adjustments. Hopefully that's going to help with the dropping. But let's keep going. All right. Where were we? We were right over here taking a look at our query, and we were looking at the result of our query here. Let me see here. Let's go here. I'm going to take a, might have to restart this. Yes. Okay, great. So let's just take a step back. Our very latest query here is looking for two specific values. We want everything that is falling in $1.98 and $3.96 buckets. And we have specified that by using the in operator. And the in is used with open and close parentheses and specifying the values that we wish to see in our result separated by a comma. Okay. And when I ran this, we got our complete result with only the values we've specified. So to this question, how many invoices do we have that are exactly $1.98 or $3.96? We can effectively respond to this and say there are 168 invoices that satisfy this criteria. All right. I'm going to pause here and look back. Any questions? Any questions so far? Just let me know. Drop it in the chat, and I'll be happy to respond to those. Okay. If not, we're going to keep pushing. All right. So that was our third request. How many invoices do we have that are exactly these amounts? And this is, by the way, is our third way of querying numeric data here. Now, let's take a switch in terms of the data types that we are going after. First, we were interested in a lot of numeric information, the values of invoices, specific invoice values, and specific invoice amounts. Now, the management has said, you know what, we've done some good analysis of what you've provided us so far. Now, can you tell me how many invoices have been billed to the city of Brussels? Okay. Now, this is a different twist in that we are now moving from numeric to text data. As we did before, we have everything set up. We said, let's go to that invoice table, and we want to see these specific fields from that invoice table. Now, to satisfy the request, we're going to say, well, we're interested in only the billing cities that is going to be equal to Brussels. Now, I'm going to put two single quotes, which is the major difference between querying numeric versus text data. Text data must be surrounded in quotes like this. And the value we're interested in is Brussels. And let me just put it in not caps. And let's now run this query. And here we have 7 rows returned. Okay. And I'm just going to go here, expose the full query result. We can see that we have 7 invoices that were billed to the city of Brussels. And we could, again, with data accuracy, respond to this request from management to say, well, here's your 7 invoices. Okay. As I do, I'm after each, by the way, just a heads up and what's coming. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more queries that we're going to run down. And after each one, as I've done like this, I am going to jump over and ask if there's any questions, okay? And I hope there are questions, even if there's not now or maybe after. Please feel free to drop some, as I say, there's no bad question. So please feel free to drop a question on me and I'll be happy to answer. Okay. All right. Let's keep going. I'm going to nominate Jolie. Hopefully you won't be too shy, but let me nominate you to just keep me up to date with making sure that the stream is still happening. Right. We had a couple technical difficulties. So I'm just going to tap on your shoulder a bit and just give me that yes or no and let me know so I can keep going without talking to myself. All right. So let us keep going here to the next request. In a twist here, our management has said, okay, how many invoices were billed? It was great that we had 7 billed to Brussels, but I'm just going to focus on part A here. How many invoices were billed to cities that start with B? Now, this is going to introduce a particular character called the wild card character. So let's see how we would construct this statement. We want to say where billing city, and the first keyword we're going to introduce is like. And then we're going to introduce our single quotes because we are still querying text data. So we want to say like B because we're interested in billing cities that start with B. And we're going to put the %, AKA, also known as the wildcard character. And what is the wildcard character? Wildcard is just simply saying, I'll just put it up here, I don't care. If you remember that with the wildcard character, it will help things a lot. So basically you're saying, I want to see a B in my result, and I don't care what comes after that B. What I do care about is that result does start with a B, and that result meaning the billing city. So let's now run this query and take a look at our results. We have 62 rows here, and I'm telling by reading this here. And if we take a look at our billing city, we see that we have Brussels, Boston, Berlin, and so forth. Everything from 1 all the way down to the 60-second record starts with a B. And that is a direct result of our wildcard character, which is used in conjunction with the like operator. Okay? All right. I'm going to do as I do. Awesome. Thanks, Jolie. Thank you so much. And I think this little adjustment, like I did, hopefully I'm not talking too much to jinx it, but hopefully our session here won't be interrupted as it has been a couple times before. All right. Now, what about this part B? How many invoices were billed to cities that have a B anywhere in the name? Now, if we look at this description of this wildcard character, I don't care. So what don't you care about? I don't care what comes before the B. I don't care what comes after the B. What I do care about that there is a B anywhere in the name. To do this, I'm going to say one little twist to this. I introduce a second wildcard character in my like or in my where clause here, right? And I say open quote, the %, then I put the character I'm interested in seeing, and then I put another %. So this is just basically saying I don't care what comes before, I don't care what comes after, I do care that there's a B in there. Let's now run this. We went to 83 rows, and if we take a look at that billing city, not everything starts with B anymore. There's Dublin in there, there's Edinburgh, but guess what? In all of these cases where it does not start with B, there's a B somewhere in there. So the criteria here is effectively saying, give me billing cities with a B anywhere in its name. And if we go all the way down, we'll see that that holds true, despite having records that do not start with a B. Okay? All right. As simple as you see it here, these little pieces get stacked up to make you a very powerful data analyst. Okay? All right. We're going to keep pushing here. Unless there are questions. Okay, none so far, but let's keep going. All right. Our next question here is about another type of data type. We've looked at numerics, we've looked at text. Now, let's get into our data type, okay? And our management has asked us how many invoices were billed on this particular date, and that is May 22nd of 2010. Now, before I do a single thing, and dates are super important, which is why I pause a lot in the course with regard to this, but we definitely want to make sure of a couple things. Now, with regard to dates, I mentioned this in the last session, dates can be formatted in a number of different ways. In the way that we are looking at it right now, which is year, month, day, but it can easily be day, month, year, or month, day, year. And these particular characters, which are dashes, can easily be slashes, as more commonly you might see a date formatted. So what our first step must be is to go into the table of question, in this case, the invoice table, via the Browse Data tab, and take a look at the billing city. Now that billing city, to the billing date, sorry, that is, let's go over here. And I'm focused on the invoice date. So let's just jump back to the browse data, and I'm looking at this invoice date. Why am I taking a look at this? I'm interested in seeing how it's formatted. And I might go one more step into the database structure. And I go to that invoice and I look at that invoice date. And under the type column, I could see that it is date time. Now, that's a little significant here. It's not simply a date, it's the date as well as the time. And when we look at that invoice date column within the invoice table in our browse data tab, we see that we have 00 colon 00 colon 00, which is depicting the time. And obviously it's all set to zeros, so it's not really being used, but it is important for us to take note of. So now let's go back to our Execute SQL tab and start constructing our query for this. We're interested in the invoice date. And invoice date equal to this particular date. Dates, just like text, must be surrounded in single quotes. And that's the first thing I put here. And in there, I'm going to put that date we're interested in, 2010-05, exactly as I see it, -22. And I do want to include the time, 00 colon 00 colon 00. Now, let's now run this query here. And we have a single record as our result. And it has pinpointed the exact record that satisfies this criteria. Now, what happens if I did not include that 0000? Let's try that. When I run this query, I do not get a result. So I'm emphasizing the importance of formatting dates exactly as you see it stored in the table. And what clues you into that is this Browse Data tab, which tells you how the data is being stored, which also tells you how you must construct your SQL statement to satisfy that criteria. So let me just undo that. When I include the time portion, I can hit that run and get an actual result. Okay, so super important here as far as working with dates. Now, let's introduce one more twist here, right? If I did not want to include the time segment, I can include a function, okay? And the date function effectively allows me to work with only the dates, despite the fact that the value that is stored within the table is both date and time. So if I were to alter my where clause here and say date, open parenthesis, and I'll just pause here for a second, IntelliSense, which is that pop-up that comes up, is actually giving us some clues as to what input values the date function expects. And it's saying it expects a time string. And the time string is our date field, in which case this is our invoice date. I'm going to close that parenthesis around invoice date. And now I'm going to modify this and include only the date. And as you saw before, when I tried this without the date function, I did not get a result. Now let's try it with the date function, and I have that result, okay? So this date function effectively helps us format our results and helps us write a little more efficient query so that we don't include values that are really not being used. And in this case, that's that time portion of the invoice date, okay? Any questions? Okay, so far so good. All right, we're going to keep pushing here. Awesome, 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 awesome. All right, so now we're making some moves. We've introduced our date function. We're actually filtering using our where clause, and we specify that value, which is the date value only from that invoice date. Okay, let's keep going. Now, our new request is to say, well, we want to get all of the invoices that were billed after a particular date and have a total of less than $3. Now, this is significant because up till this point, we were only filtering on a single column, meaning if you look before here, we're only using this one column, invoice date. In this case here, we're using billing city. In this case here, billing city and so forth. But for the first time now, we are being asked to include two columns in our where clause. And that is going to be able to satisfy this particular request. So let's start responding to this. We want to get all invoices that were billed after the 5th of May, the 22nd of May, 2010. Okay, so let's do that and say date. We're going to include our date function again, and we want to say where the invoice date, and I'll just put that in lowercase just to be consistent. And if I can spell. Okay, where that invoice date is greater than the value that we're looking for, and that was 2010-05-22. Now, this is exactly our query that we had previously, right? But now we also have some more criteria, not just invoices that are greater than this date, but also have a total value of less than $3. So here we introduce our operator, the AND operator, and we include the second column, the total, less than the $3. Okay, so before I run this, I want to point out a couple important things, right? The greater than symbol, right? The greater than operator, to be more precise, we're using where this greater than operator to tell us we were interested in dates that are after the one that we've specified, it greater than, and we want a total that is less than this amount, $3. Another important difference is parentheses around the date because of the type of data it is date data, and that needs to be surrounded in single quotes, but numeric data does not. Now let's run this particular query. We have 124 rows returned, and when we look at our results, which is our habit that we should get into as data analysts, really pay attention to those results before you hand it off to whoever has requested this information. Does it satisfy what we want to have? We wanted totals that were less than $3, and so far it seems to be the case, and greater than the 5th, May 22nd, 2010. You can tell that this date is formatted in a way that I myself am not super familiar with. But here it is. All of these dates are greater than May 22nd, 2010. Okay? And here we have satisfied that criteria, which we can now go back to our management and say, here you go. There are 124 records that satisfy this particular request. All right. How are we looking so far? All right. Any questions? Any questions? Awesome. Okay. We'll keep pushing. Let's keep pushing. We're doing very well. By the way, these last few ones here are call for a little more attention, but we'll get through it in terms of explaining what that means. And again, if there's anything that is not clear, anything that does not really kind of ring through it with clarity, please feel free to ask a question. Okay. All right. Now let's go on to getting all of the invoices whose billing city starts with P or starts with D. This is what this should be instead of P. So let's take a look at that. We want our billing city and if you remember, we're looking for a partial search, or this is referred to as a partial search. We're not sure exactly what that city name is, but we do know that it starts with a P. So to do that, we introduce the like, and we say our open and close parenthesis, and we say, I want a P, and I don't care what comes after that P, and that's that wildcard or percent sign. So that's one part of the request. Get all the invoices whose billing city starts with P, and then the other part, or, starts with D. So or is a giveaway to the type of operator that you should be using there, the or operator. Or billing city, again, you must repeat that name, that column name. Billing city, like, we're going to open and close our parentheses, starts with D. So we go D, and we put our percent sign, again, which is our wildcard character. Now, this effectively is going to respond and say to our request and say, give me all of the invoices whose billing city starts with P or starts with a D. Now, let's run this query. Okay, we have 56 rows, and let's again examine our results a little more closely. The billing city has to start with P or a D. And when we take a look all the way down, we do see that indeed all of our billing cities start with a P or starts with a D. Okay, and that is directly because of our query that we've constructed here. All right, so far so good. Awesome, awesome, awesome. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling it. I mean, this is actually let's digress a quick sec. This is actually pretty good. There are always going to be some sort of stumble. There's always going to be some sort of hiccup, something unexpected, but we're not going to allow that to dictate our narrative, right? Our goal is to get through with a thorough understanding of our mission, at least for today. And despite whether it might be a disruption in your internet, a disruption in something that's happening personally, professionally, we're going to keep pushing and keep going to the end and get our successful result. All right. Okay. Now, let's go on to another request. Okay. Here we have a scenario where we want to get all of the invoices that are greater than $1.98 from cities whose name starts with P or starts with D. So really, if you look, this is exactly what we just responded to in our previous query. We wanted cities whose name started with P or started with D. However, the new twist is we want all invoices that are greater than $1.98 as well. Now, how do we respond to this? Well, this will allow us to tap into some rules of engagement, basically order of operation. Now, you may be seeing this PEMDAS and BEMDAS, but I will go into what this means specifically after we construct our query. So to make things easy, I'm going to go back to the last query that we created. I'm just going to take that where clause. I'm going to replace this over here. So at this point, we have the exact query we responded to previously, and that is where the billing city starts with P or the billing city starts with D. Now, the other part of the criteria is saying, get all the invoices that are greater than $1.98. So if I were to say, I want the total, which is greater than $1.98, and the billing city like P or the billing city like D. Now let's run this query and see our result here. Now let's take a look. It runs successfully. That's great. But let's take a look at something that does not seem quite right. Now we want billing cities that start with P or D, and that seems to be satisfied. But we want the totals must be greater than $1.98. Now, if you take a look at record 4 here, Dublin does start with a D, but the total is less than $1.98. So what is happening here? Now, exposes our order of operations that becomes a very significant thing for you as a data analyst to know. This, as it is here, is where SQL is not ordering or handling the criteria in the order that we would like it to. What is actually happening is it's saying where total is greater than $1.98 and the billing city like P, okay? So by this saying, okay, give me the total that is greater than $1.98 and the billing city that like P, it does not fully capture or execute our results in the order that we need it to, thereby allowing records that do not satisfy our criteria to be included. Okay, looking for another record there, but we certainly see that this is not part of the criteria. Now, this PEMDAS and BEMDAS refers to basic math where we direct the order of operation. And the way that this is written is saying parentheses come first, then exponents, then multiplication, then division, then addition, then subtraction. The only difference between the P and the D is just brackets versus parentheses, and this is very common. Parentheses are more often used in European countries, and brackets is more used in the US. But regardless, the rule still stands firm. We order, or the execution of this happens in this order. Now, brackets, because brackets dictate what is run first, we need to alter our where clause like the following. We're going to surround the part of the where clause we would like to have executed first. So first, we'd like to see billing cities that start with P or billing cities that start with D. Why? Well, that's the first part of our criteria that we need to satisfy, and that creates a subset of records. So when SQL is fed this particular statement, or your SQL relational database management system is fed this particular statement, you're directing it to say, first, filter for the records that are P, that begin with P or begin with D. And from that subset of records, then give me the totals that are greater than $1.98. Now, before I run this altered version, let's pay attention to the 43 rows that have been returned currently without the PEMDAS or BEMDAS rules applied. Now I'm going to run this statement with our altered criteria here. Why did I just run like that? Well, one of the things I wanted to point out, and I just wanted to make this point, maybe not at the right moment, but when you highlight a particular part of your SQL statement, it attempts to run that particular part of the statement and not the entire thing. So make sure that you've unselected your query, then run the entire statement, okay? And now our query runs successfully, but our records have gone down, if you notice. We went down to 35 records. And if we take a look at our results again, I'm just going to make this a little bigger. All of our billing cities seem to start with P or D, and that's great. But more importantly, what was now fixed is our totals are greater than that $1.98. We no longer have that record that fell beneath. Now we could even be doubly sure. Let's actually do one more twist. Let's add a order by. And let's order by that total column. And we didn't specify ascending, but we know that that defaults. So ascending value puts the smallest value to the top. And right here, we could tell that our smallest value is indeed satisfying our criteria, which is above $1.98, which is $1.99 in the first records instance here. Okay. So very, very, very important rule to be aware of as you pursue your data analysis skills, and you beef them up and you firm them up. Okay. Any questions on this here? Okay, just double back. Okay, awesome. No questions so far. All right, we're coming down the bend to the end here. We're really at the last point. We went a little further because of our disruptions a bit, but we'll get it going. Okay. Now, let's jump into our final finale of a statement. We're going to introduce another key component of learning SQL, which is the case statement, also known as a calculated column. Now, here we have a scenario where WSDA's management has a sales goal for customers to spend between $7 and $15. That's like their target range. So what they've done is bucketed particular ranges of values and labeled each one of those buckets according to their own internal business logic. Very, very common. Now, how would we go about doing this in SQL? Well, we need to introduce first the case statement. So unlike what we've been doing before, we're going to say first, let me just comment out the where clause, and we need to introduce the case statement. So after this total field in my select clause, I'm going to say another comma, and I'm going to introduce the first keyword, which is case. Okay. And this tells us get ready for a case statement. Now I need to put in the criteria that has been specified or laid out by the management here. So case when, which is saying here is our first criteria, when the total is less than, and let's say $2, then let's call this our baseline. Okay. And I'll pause and explain this. It's our baseline purchase. Okay. So what are we doing here right now? We're saying first, we want to specify our first bucket, label the first amount of records that satisfy a particular criteria. The when statement is saying, here is our first condition. And this is saying when the total is less than $2, then this is our baseline purchase. Why is it less than $2? Well, our upper value of this baseline purchase is $1.99. Less than $2 is $1.99 and below. Okay, so here we're effectively covering this bucket of information. Now let's go on to cover our next bucket, the low purchase. Now we want to say another criteria, which is when. So when the total, and now it's a little different. We want a range of values between 2 and 6.99, right? So when we say total between $2 and keyword $6.99, then what? Then label this bucket of records as our low purchase. Put that in not caps. All right, so here we have bucketed two of our categories, baseline and low. And let's just look at this a little closer. When the total is between these set of values, and that's $2 and $6.99, then label this as low purchase. Let's continue. When, thirdly, the total is between $7 and $15, then let's label this our target. This is where we'd like WSDA's management would love if everyone would be in this range as far as a target purchase. Okay. Now, we have 3 of our criteria accounted for. Now we have our last one, which is the top performer. And top performers are anything that does not satisfy this criteria. By the way, we're covering from 0 all the way to 15 through these 3 statements. Now we're going to say else top performer. Let me just get that non-caps. Let me explain this. So else, why? So why didn't we put another when? Well, with this case statement, when all other conditions are satisfied, we're saying, well, if it's not falling in any of these buckets, then this has to be a top performer, okay? And that's effectively what is done with the else statement. And we're going to close off the case statement with the keyword end. Now, just as any columns, now this, as you see, so we have our invoice date as a column, billing address as a column, billing city as a column, total as a column. This whole thing is also a column, a calculated column, a column that we have specified as data practitioners. We can, like any other column, alias this column, and let's alias this as purchase, caps again, type. Now I'm going to pause with this one here. What I have not done is surrounded this in quotes because I have no space between purchase and type. And that has been a main question I've been asked from the folks that have taken the course is, hey, I'm getting an error because they're putting a space between purchase and type. I'm purposefully removing that space so that I avoid having to put quotes around my alias. And if you recall from our first session on aliasing, if an alias does not have a space between the name, you do not need to encircle that with single quotes, double quotes, or square brackets. If you do have a space, you must surround that with single, double, or square brackets. Okay, so with this, we've now included our calculated column, and I'm going to run this without the where so far. Let's run this particular statement here. Okay, query has run successfully. Let's give take a look at our results here. Here we see our calculated column appearing, and we have the different buckets that we have specified, or management has given us to specify. Our baseline, which is between 99 cents and $1.99. And if we look at that total, $1.98 does indeed satisfy that particular criteria. A low purchase between $2 and $6.99, that definitely is between that range. So is this one. The target is between 7 and 15 bucks, and we have $8.91. And let's see if we can find any top performers. Maybe not any top performers. Let's see. How can we easily find a top performer? Well, let's do that. Let's introduce our where clause here now. Now we can say where purchase type, and purchase type is our calculated column, is equal to top performer. Let's now put TOP. Now let's run this query. And we can see, instead of us scrolling through all of those records, we've easily found the top performer by including our calculated column in our where clause. I don't know, when I was doing SQL, this was pretty mind-blowing to me. It was like, okay, I could actually create a column here and then sort by it. But that's exactly what you can do. And guess what? You can search for any of these values in your calculated column. So let's now remove top performer and put low purchase. We can tell we had what? 12 top performers. Now, how many low purchases do we have? 120. Okay. So I hope we can see here how powerful this statement is slowly becoming. All right. We've now introduced our calculated column via the case statement. And now we're filtering via that case. We're filtering based on our created purchase type calculated column. Okay. So pretty powerful stuff here. All right. I know we went a little beyond, but I think that is going to give us where we are. Okay, now I'm jumping back over looking at these questions. Okay, so let me just see if I understand this question the right way. On the where, you can not put the P or D portion first, so it runs in the right order. If I read that question correctly, on the where clause, you want to know if you can put the P and the D portion first so that it runs in the right order. So let's jump back over to that really quick. And I think it was P or D here. Got it. So I'm assuming you are asking about the order of operation. And just to recap this again, we are including these parentheses to make sure that this part of our where clause is executed first. So via the rules of PEMDAS or BEMDAS, these open and close quotes are effectively saying, execute this part first. And the order actually matters, as we saw. If not, we tend to get results that we don't intend. Okay? So I hope that is answering the question if I understood it the right way. If not, please feel free to explain it a little more, or hit me up after the session here, which I'm going to wrap up pretty soon here. Okay. This has been a really good session. I just want to say, just going to take this out for a second, really and truly very Proud of everyone who has stuck with it, and thank you for sticking through the technical difficulties. But like I mentioned, um, I'm learning as I actually evolve here as well, that challenges and unexpected things are just part of life, right? And it's not really about the challenge or the unexpected thing. It really is more about how you respond to that, right? So hopefully I demonstrated that the right way in our technical difficulties. And if there's anything that was missed or slipped or wasn't clear, I'm always here. Connect with me on LinkedIn and let me know what your question was. This was chapter 5. In case you are now joining, we are going all the way to chapter 11. So look out for the new session, which will be sent out pretty shortly. And I will send to the LinkedIn, on my LinkedIn profile, the new invite to that upcoming session, let's say in about 2 weeks. But we will be moving on to chapter 6, and yes, keep pushing on. In the meantime, just let me know if you have any questions. Send me a connection request on LinkedIn, and I'm more than happy to connect with you. Okay. All right. Thank you so much, wherever you're tuning in from. I appreciate you spending some time with me, taking your time to just increase your skill. And I will do everything within my power to help enable that. Okay. I see some of the old faces here, some of the regulars. Thanks for sticking with it. Lisa, Joel, thank you so much, Jolie, for just being my go-to person, helping me see if everything was okay throughout the technical difficulties. And hope to see you next time. All right. And again, I'll send out that invite pretty soon. If not today, certainly by tomorrow, by the latest. Okay. Awesome. With that, I hope you enjoy the rest of your Tuesday, and I will talk to you soon.